what that means, but the meeting is now called to order.
Wow, a good loud ring this morning.
Good. Finally got it down.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this one. Sorry, David. I'm really looking forward to this one. As we're just talking about there with Rotary getting involved in supporting the environment, I thought it would be a good idea to find an organization that could speak to us on that topic, or at least tell us why we should be moving forward on that topic, and what Rotary could do about it or should be doing about it. And obviously Rotary thinks it's serious, or they wouldn't be putting that announcement out. So I looked around and I found the Sierra Club. I'd obviously heard of the Sierra Club before, but I was wondering how they could advise us, tell us what they do, why they do it, what the good things are about the Sierra Club, and why Rotary might get involved. Rotary clubs might get involved with the Sierra Club as part of that area of focus that Rotary is getting involved in. And I found the Sierra Club, got in contact with them, and David's name came up as a potential speaker for our area. David Richards is on the screen there. And David, I'll read what little bio I have here, and David can tell us some more about himself and the organization. But David's background is a retired lawyer. Don't hold that against him. He's a member and past chair of the Southeast Michigan group of the Sierra Club, also known as SEMG. Consists of our Tri-County area, and member and past chair of SEMG Political Committee. Maybe you can explain what that is after all the politics we've been going through in the last year. David thinks that if there's any particular focus you'd like to interest our attendees in the meeting, please let me know. You can send it by chat. I will ask David at the end if there's any serious stop the moment kind of questions. I don't think David will mind if you stop him for a second and put a question in, but he'd rather you held the questions over till the end. Send them to me by chat, or just write down the note and remember to ask the question at the end. So that being said, David, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me here to represent the Sierra Club. When I heard about the invitation, I thought that would be a good one for me because I have a fairly extensive history with service clubs. I've been a member of the Optimist Club in Royal Oak for 38 years. Of course, I'm a past president. Anybody who's been around that long is a past president. Also a member of the Kiwanis Club in Warren. I worked for a period of time in Warren. And of course, I'm also a past president of the Warren Kiwanis Club. I can't say I've been involved with the Rotary Club. I'm familiar with it, though, because my father was a Rotarian.
Hey, good.
And needless to say, he was a president of the Rotarians in
there you go.
City of Hazel Park.
Hey, we're looking for a president.
I've done my time. If you were going to add others, I got other offices too, but I didn't think we ought to dwell too much on it. I also spent 3 years as the chair of the Warren Kiwanis Club has a foundation, and I spent 3 years as chair of the foundation. And I just gave that one up. I'm now in kind of a mode of becoming committee members instead of chair or president. So I'm sorry, but you're going to have to look elsewhere for your president. But in any event, well, let me tell you that while Zoom is not bad, I can do this from home. I do miss the fact that I don't have a chance to win the 50-50. If you're like every other service club,
there's a 50-50.
When you have a face-to-face meeting, you have a 50-50. And I am disappointed that I won't be able to participate and win in that. So with that, let me talk about the Sierra Club. I'm calling this, if I were to title it, Introduction to the Sierra Club, what it is and what we do. And as Phil said, if you do have a really pressing question, go ahead and interrupt me, And I want to talk about what you guys want to hear as much as anything else. But also, if you have questions that you want to just have asked at the end, I do intend to leave time at the end and send them to Phil via chat, or else get his attention at the end and funnel the questions through Phil, and I'll do my best to answer them at that time. I'm a kind of person, I'm usually a slow starter in talking, but once I get started, it's hard to stop me. So if I'm getting close to the time where you think I ought to end, give me some kind of a hint. It'll leave me with a couple of minutes for questions before we're done. But we were talking about Scotland, and I was commenting on Phil's accent and missing the fact that it was actually Scottish, but the start of the Sierra Club has to do with a Scotsman, John Muir. And some of you may be familiar with him, but he was born in Scotland. That's how he was a Scotsman. But he came to the US with his family at age 11 in 1849. And they moved to Wisconsin and lived on a farm there. And so he was a farmer in his youth. He then attended the University of Wisconsin for several years, and then decided he wanted to do a little roaming. A little bit of wanderlust was part of his life for his entire life. And so he started taking odd jobs around the Midwest and into Canada, around Georgian Bay and so forth. And he did that for a period of time. And then he took a job in Indianapolis at a wagon wheel making factory. And in the process, he was doing well for a while. Then an accident happened where he got a tool that hit his eye, and it caused blindness actually in both eyes, which fortunately after about a month or 6 weeks did go away. But he said, you know, I think life is short and I like the outdoors. He'd taken classes in botany and other natural sciences at the University of Wisconsin. And he said, I don't want to be inside in a factory. And so he started roaming a little further, and he walked down to Florida. And I mean walked, he wrote a book about it. And once he got down there, he ended up getting on a ship back up to New York City. And from New York City, he got on a ship that went around the southern end of South America and up the coast to California, and settled for a period of time in San Francisco, California. While he was there, he hiked up to the Sierra Nevada mountains, and some of you may be familiar with them, but they're a major mountain range on the eastern side of California. And part of the range is Mount Whitney, which is the highest mountain in the US and the continental US. Alaska has Mount Denali, which is higher, but the highest in the continental 48 states is in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And he would go to the Yosemite area and walk and hike there. And for one period of time, he was a sheep herder, and he became very familiar with that area. And he started writing. And through his writing about natural things and Yosemite in particular, he got to be fairly well known nationally. And famous people would come to visit him. One of them was Ralph Waldo Emerson, who came and discussed things while camping in the Yosemite area. And more famous than Ralph Waldo Emerson was Teddy Roosevelt, when he was president, came out, and the two of them camped in the Yosemite area for a period of days and talked about conservation and national parks and things of that type. He did, just so you know, he eventually did at some point marry and settle down for about 10 years as a farmer in Martinez, California. And he had 2 daughters, but his wife was very tolerant and allowed him to continue to hike up in the Sierra Nevada mountains whenever he felt like it. So that seemed to work out. But he was a farmer, he was a writer, he was a naturalist, and he was an activist. And he has been called the father of our national park system. He was instrumental in having Yosemite made a national park. He was helpful in creating Sequoia, Mount Rainier, Petrified Forest, and Grand Canyon National Parks, and sometimes referred to as a father of our national parks. But in 1892, getting to the main point, he with some other people, although he was the driving force, formed the Sierra Club. He founded it. The purpose in his mind was to do something for wildness and make the mountains glad. And that was how he thought of it. And that was 128 years ago. And the Sierra Club is still around and going strong. It's considered to be the best known environmental organization in the United States, although it's less well known than I thought. Not long ago, we were changing bank accounts, financial institutions, and the teller that we were working with to make those arrangements asked us, what is the Sierra Club? So not everybody knows.
No, we have the same problem.
Yeah, what is a Rotarian? What is a Kiwanian?
Yeah.
So forth. And anyway, currently the headquarters is in California. It's in Oakland. It has been in San Francisco in the past. Currently, it's in Oakland. As to how many members, I've seen a variety of figures, but it appears the consensus is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million people across the country. The organization of the Sierra Club is it's one national organization, but it's divided into chapters, and the chapters are mostly the states. Each state has a chapter. There are a couple of territories that also have a chapter. The state of California, which is where the club was formed, and initially it was most of its activities were in the state of California, but that's multiplied into several different chapters. So that's the next lower level. And then the chapters are subdivided into groups, and that's more of a local group. And you folks are part of the Southeast Michigan group of the Sierra Club. So we're part of the Michigan chapter, which is part of the National Sierra Club. Southeastern Michigan group, primarily, there's a few exceptions, a little bit of area that's separate from this, but mainly it's Oakland County, Macomb County, and Wayne County. My experience with the Sierra Club, I've been chair of the executive committee of the Southeast Michigan group for a little less than 3 years. I've retired from that. I'm still on the executive committee, but as of the end of 2019, I retired from my chairmanship. And we also have a political committee, and I was chair of that for a number of years. Now I'm a committee member rather than a chair, and so I get to assist the chair. I find those of you who've been involved in volunteer groups know that being chair or president, despite what they tell you when they're recruiting you, they say, no, all you have to do is show up at the meetings, no big deal. But
Yeah, right.
It's about 3 times the work as being a member of the committee. So I'm satisfied these days to be a member of the committee. But the mission of the Sierra Club, and I'm going to paraphrase this because if you read it word for word, you'll all fall asleep. So I won't do that. I'll try to emphasize the highlights. The mission of the Sierra Club is to explore, enjoy, and protect the wild places of the earth. Also to promote the responsible use of the earth's resources, and to educate and enlist humanity to protect the natural and human environment. So that's all kind of a mouthful, but the main thing is you want to get out in the wilderness, want to explore the wilderness, want to protect the wilderness, and want to protect the environment generally. That's what it all boils down to as far as I'm concerned. Now, the club is a little different. The Sierra Club is a little different than some of the organizations I've been involved with because it's got a collection of paid employees, not well paid, but they get paid to a certain extent, as well as volunteers. I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid. I do it because I'm mostly retired from my regular job. And so it's fun and I enjoy it, and it's a good cause. But we have not only the administrative staff in Oakland, California, but we also have staff people who are paid people in Lansing. We have a political director. We have a chief executive for the Michigan chapter, and we have some other people who are paid employees. But the grassroots of the Sierra Club is volunteers. Now, the Sierra Club is, as far as I can observe, is known for three main things. I'm trying to hide my notes here and pretend I don't have them. But I do have some notes here. One of the things that not everybody realizes, people join for different reasons. And some people join for this reason. It wasn't my reason, but we have a lot of outdoor recreational activities. At the local level, the Southeast Michigan group, the one that I've been involved in leadership position, the Tri-County area, we have volunteer-led hikes at either county parks or state recreation areas. We have canoeing, kayaking, snowshoeing, nature walks. We also have bike rides, and that's one that's near and dear to me because I'm a bike rider. And although with the pandemic this past year, things have been cut back and eliminated the latter part of the year, normally we have a bike ride to places like Harson's Island. Anybody who's never been to Harson's Island, I highly recommend visiting there. It's a great spot, an hour from downtown Detroit, probably a little over an hour from Farmington, but we have a bike ride around there. Towards the end, we go to a bar called Sansuchi. Some of you may be familiar with it. And although unfortunately, I understand it's closed now, but I'm hoping that's going to reopen after the pandemic is over, at least with a new owner. And we also have what we call a green cruise in August. We have a bike ride that starts in Ferndale and goes through Oak Park and Southfield and into Birmingham, through some neighborhoods in Birmingham, back around across Woodward Avenue through Royal Oak and back to Ferndale, approximately 20 miles or so, and that's sponsored by the Sierra Club. The National Sierra Club has more elaborate trips. At one time, the Sierra Club was noted for mountaineering, heavy-duty mountain climbing.
Wow. And
they still do to some extent, but I think more of the trips are things like whitewater rafting and backpacking. If you want to go out west on a guided trip doing those types of things, the Sierra Club has a program where you can do that. Then we also are involved with political activities, and that's probably my major area of interest. I've been involved in local politics in the past. We do endorsements of candidates, mostly state level candidates. We don't necessarily get involved in every city council race and mayor's race. Occasionally we will, but normally we won't. But we do endorsements for state rep candidates, state senate candidates, and statewide candidates. Then we also do some lobbying twice a year, except for election year. In the fall of an election year, we don't think there's any point in stopping in, but during other times, twice a year, 80 to 100 volunteers will descend upon Lansing and talk to state reps, state senators, and their staff members, and talk to them about environmental issues. And it's a fascinating thing, whether we change any minds or not, but we give people who are supporters a pat on the back. And those that aren't our supporters, it's always cordial. We've never had any, that I know of, any really hostile interactions. But it's interesting to see the process, because you see our legislators in their offices, and occasionally you get a chance to go and watch the sessions in the Capitol building. And last time I was there, I went in to watch a committee hearing, and you see a little bit about how the government works. So that's part of what the political committee does. We have a local Southeast Michigan group political committee, and there's also a statewide political committee. And it's fairly bureaucratic. We have to start out with recommendations from the local group and then send those to Lansing, and the Lansing group makes a final decision on who gets endorsed. We also do litigation. We're interested in what environmental laws are in existence, and we want to see them enforced. And if we see violations, we make some arrangement, not all usually with our own attorneys, but we will find somebody who's experienced in the area, who doesn't charge too much to handle a case for us. And so from time to time, you'll see references to litigation brought on behalf of the Sierra Club. The third thing that we're noted for is education. You can get information from the Sierra Club about environmental issues, and in particular, the Southeast Michigan group, and I think this is probably true of most of the groups, we have a general membership meeting about 8 times a year, and we have speakers on environmental issues that are brought in mostly to educate ourselves and anybody who wants to attend. And the programs, occasionally we do have a clinker, I will confess to that, but sometimes they're fascinating, the types of programs we have. We had one on the Red Rock areas of Utah. If any of you have been out in that area, Utah has 5 national parks that are absolutely fantastic. Arches is one of the best national parks around. The only issue with that is it's not big enough to hold the crowds. So it tends to be kind of crowded when you go in, but it's a fascinating place. And there's Zion, Bryce, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef. In any event, we got a representative from an organization come and talk about the Red Rock areas of Utah and the beauty of them and the threats to them. We had a speaker talk about bicycling in Detroit. It seems that around the turn of the century, from the 19th to 20th century, the city of Detroit was a mecca for bicycling, both for recreational bicycling and for transportation, just getting to work. That was, of course, before cars were prevalent, and you had some streetcars to get around, but a bicycle was convenient. And Detroit was a major area, it's flat. The weather was not the best, I'm guessing. But there were a number of clubs and people who just use it as a main form of transportation. We had a program in November that was fascinating. We had a Native American from Michigan. He involved with he was the tribal chairman, not the chief. I don't know if they have chiefs nowadays. The tribal chairman of the Little Traverse Bay bands of Ottawa Indians. He's from Harbor Springs, and he also has been the chair. There's apparently an organization of all the Native American groups in the state of Michigan. He's been chair of that, and he's also on the International Commission for the environmental issues in the Great Lakes, and he's gone to Europe for various national conferences and United Nations, and he's just a very impressive and fascinating man. And he was our speaker in November. Coming up, and now I'll get my advertising in, our next general membership program. I should tell you that when we met face-to-face, we were meeting at Elk Club in Royal Oak. But since the pandemic, these have been on Zoom. But the next one is a woman, a Dr. Missy Schultz, who's an employee of the city of Ann Arbor, and she is the sustainability and innovation officer for the city of Ann Arbor. I think it's the only city that has, I don't have the title exactly right, but that's the substance of it. But she's going to speak on February the 4th at 7 o'clock. And that's our general membership program, which we consider part of our educating the public and our members as to what's going on. I should tell you that to get information on any of our activities for us, if you Google Sierra Club SEMG, that should provide you with some information on what's coming up. We also use the website Meetup. That in particular will show you outdoor activities that are coming up. As I said, they've been kind of canceled with the pandemic, but there are some on the national level being scheduled for this spring. And with the vaccine, I think by this summer, we'll be having our outings program going again. So if that interests you, check Meetup as well as the Sierra Club SEMG, and those provide you with the information you need. If you're interested in an extensive backpacking trip or whitewater trip or mountain climbing, just Google Sierra Club and you'll get to the national organization, and you look around at the categories, and you'll eventually find one that will talk about those trips. So I should also mention one of the other things we do. We have a program called Inspiring Connections Outdoors. And what that is about is taking kids who normally wouldn't get a chance to experience the outdoors. A lot of them are inner city. We do a lot with the Highland Park Boys Club, Boys and Girls Club, and we take them camping, skiing. Some of them, there was one project where they went camping along Lake Michigan. And for some of the kids, it was the first time they'd ever seen a Great Lake, first time they'd ever seen a sand dune. And so that's part of our program. So anyway, that's most of what I had to say. Oh, I was going to tell you what the substantive issues the Sierra Club is concerned about. And this gets into politics a bit, and I'm not going to get too deep into that. I'm going to tell you what the major environmental issues as far as protection of water and air and human welfare in general. But as you might guess, the national organization, probably the major issue is climate change. The Sierra Club has a position that it's real and it needs to be dealt with, or we're going to have severe consequences. At the state of Michigan level, probably the two issues that are most significant that people talk about in the Sierra Club are Line 5. I would guess that most of you know there's a pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac, and it's been there for upwards of 60 years. I think it's getting now something like 65 years, maybe even more. And there have been some issues with its maintenance. And if it were to have a spill, the devastation to the Straits area, both aesthetically and economically, would be astronomical. If it were to occur in the wintertime, the Coast Guard has already said there's nothing they could do to contain it. And if you have oil slick on the beaches around Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, the tourist industry would be decimated more than the pandemic. And so it appears that one way or another, that pipeline is going to be removed from the floor of, I should tell you, the company that owns it is the one that was responsible for the Kalamazoo River oil spill years back, Enbridge. But now the discussion is tending towards whether or not it can be replaced with a tunnel underneath the Straits. And there's questions being discussed about whether or not that would be safe, whether or not it's something that the state of Michigan needs, because most of the oil, not all of it, but most of the product that's transported goes to Sarnia into Canada. And the Sierra Club doesn't like it because it's fossil fuel and adds to the climate change issues. So we're against it regardless, but the folks in Lansing are arguing about whether or not a tunnel is a viable solution to the removal of Line 5. The other issue I think that's significant is PFAS, a toxic substance that does not break down in the environment. There's evidence that it causes cancer and various other health issues. And until recently, it was used in a number of products, some domestic and some, it was used in fire retardant, which was used frequently by the military. And so some of our military bases have contamination from PFAS. And the question about what to do about it and who's going to pay for it is a major issue. So anyway, I think that's what I thought maybe you might want to hear. And I don't know, Phil, if you have any questions to ask me. If you want me to talk about things that you might do if anybody wants to participate in environmentally related activities.
Yeah, let me come back to that. Lynn asked a question early on, which you didn't specifically talk to, but I'm sure we're certainly interested in it. Is the Sierra Club involved with the Lake Erie water conditions?
Most definitely. The issues there has to do largely, not entirely, but largely with something called CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations. And they have a tendency, if not handled properly, to allow pollution to go into the streams. And the streams go into the rivers, and the rivers go into Lake Erie or whatever body of water we're heading for. It's also a problem with farming procedures. Fertilizers have to be used, and everybody recognizes that, but they have to be used in certain ways to avoid them running off and again going into the lake. Lake Erie in particular, as you probably know, had a period of time where the city of Toledo, which normally gets its water from Lake Erie, had to discontinue that because of an algae bloom in the lake. And that's improved slightly, but not to the point where it's clear. And the argument has been the attempt to get compliance with proper agricultural procedures on a voluntary basis has been done, and the issue is whether or not it's been successful. And the Sierra Club thinks that there should be some mandatory requirements, and so that's an issue that's going ahead. Also, there are some CAFO operations, concentrated animal feeding operations, which are mostly cattle and pigs, that enforcement is not always the best. And in some cases, as you might guess from those kinds of operations, there's a lot of sewage that results from the animals. And if that gets into streams and rivers and lakes and so forth, it contaminates them. And if that waste is not properly handled, and some operations do not properly handle it, which has resulted in litigation in the past, that's been a problem. So yes, we have been paying attention to that.
Lynn, did that answer the question, or do you have a follow-up?
No, but just to comment, Barry joined us, and Barry is farming a related Rotarian from Southeast Canada. A member of one of our clubs in our district anyway. And I know Barry has talked in some fashion several times about, the effects on Lake Erie, because obviously he lives almost in it or on it. So it's an important matter, not only for our American clubs, but also for our Canadian clubs. And I'm glad he joined the program this morning, because there might be some contact information that he can use to satisfy what interests they have. And, we can cooperate and partner on different things and different ideas. And I guess the only other comment that I would make is I would like to follow up and attend your annual meeting presentation by the young lady that you mentioned earlier, to hear what she might have to say, because it sounded like she might be water oriented. So at this point, that's all I have.
I should tell you a story of when I was a kid. My parents would often take me over to Leamington in Ontario, and I'd go swimming at a beach there, right next to that pier that goes out into Lake Erie. And we stopped doing that because every time I went swimming in Lake Erie, I would get sick afterwards. And this is going back probably late 1950s. And that was a sign that something needed to be done.
Something was wrong.
Right. And the environmental movement in the US, I can't say I'm familiar with it in Canada, but it really started getting going around 1970. And it was a result of things like that, and the story about the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland going on fire, and used to be waste dumps outside of towns. That's how the trash was eliminated. When you go outside of the town, I'm old enough to remember this. Some of you may be, but not all of you. You go to the edge of town, and there would be the town dump, and it would be on fire, and the smoke would be going into the air, and tires would be in the fire, and so forth. And people got a little tired of that, and so they started to do something about it. And so I marked 1970, and it was soon after that that the Environmental Protection Act was passed in the U.S., that we really started to pay attention to some of these issues. Obviously, John Muir did one way or another his whole life, but for the public at large, I think it was about that era that people said we want to do things a little differently.
I got a question, sticking with shallow bay areas. Saginaw Bay, one time, I don't know if people know this, one time the most popular state park in Michigan was Bay City State Park. And then the Bay, of course, became a real mess. How's its status these days?
Well, I'll tell you what, I can't tell you from a scientific point of view. My background is not scientific, and my involvement with the Sierra Club is more administrative and political. But I can tell you, I was camping at Bay City State Park. Was it 2 years ago, last summer? My family and I, we have an annual camping trip, tents and all that stuff, once a year, not regularly in tents, but once a year. And I have 2 adult children, my wife and I do that once a year. We went to the Bay City State Park, and on the waterfront, there was a red tinge along the water, and there was a power plant right nearby, not far away. And so I can't say we paid as much attention to that as we have to Maumee River area and the western end of Lake Erie, but it didn't look good. So that's as much as I can tell you.
Okay.
We have people in Lansing that would be on top of that. The professional staff I was talking about would probably give you a more precise answer than I did. But that was my observation, was that I didn't really want to go swimming in.
Well, then sticking with litigation, it seems like recently it's been things related with logging and agriculture have been the #1 problem, or litigating problems. In Michigan with all our industry, we got any lawsuits against industry and other than PFAS?
Not so much against industry per se, but the area where I'm most familiar, I actually have the title, and it's more title than real. Well, I'm the litigation chair for the Michigan chapter. So I have some familiarity with it. I say it's not as powerful as it sounds because I'm the only volunteer on the committee, and the rest of the people are in Lansing and more familiar with what's going on than I am, but technically I'm the chair. And CAFOs I talked about are an issue. We've been involved with litigation with them, and utilities are an issue. We have a whole program where we're trying to encourage the termination of the use of coal as a means of generating power. And what that means is that the utilities, every time they have to, the utilities are regulated. They're more or less regulated monopolies. They're not total monopolies, but more or less. And they have to go to the Lansing Commission to get approval for rates and their processes, and we get involved in that. And sometimes they, because they have a vested interest in certain assets that relate to fossil fuels, they will emphasize fossil fuels more than we feel they ought to. So we do make presentations and get involved in litigation over their plans and whether or not they have complied with the law in presenting their plans. And our purpose is primarily to minimize fossil fuel use and looking more for renewables of various types. And so we get involved in that. I can't think of an occasion recently where we like sued General Motors or anybody like that, or regular industry. So that's where I think most of it's been, but there are different things that have gone on in different parts of the country. And probably somewhere along the line, somebody is suing some private business that's ignoring environmental rules. There's that incident in Madison Heights. Some of you may have seen. It was not a big company, but it was one that was shut down several years ago by the state because of lack of compliance with environmental rules. And unfortunately, after the state shut them down, they went ahead and they did not clean out the site totally. And there were drums of toxic material that leaked out onto I-696 on the side of the road.
Oh, the green sludge.
Green sludge. And so that's the kind of thing that everybody, the state and us, wishes hadn't happened. And of course, we're not trying to take the place of the state, but sometimes we disagree with the state's evaluation. And sometimes the state doesn't have resources and we can supplement that a little bit. And so there's incidents like that that occur. But in general, I can't say we've gone out and sued too many hopefully profit-making businesses, with the exception of capos.
And then do you get involved with the state legislature in budgeting and funding various parts of the state government?
Well, I don't recall specifically, but certainly we'd encourage them to fund the state agencies that are involved in environmental regulation. We want to make sure that they have the resources to do their job. And so that would be a part of it. But the way I look at it is that we want to emphasize the importance of environmental issues and how best to approach them. And if they come to agree with us, they're going to make sure that the funding is there. But I'm sure that from time to time that topic has come up. Each time we go to Lansing, we formulate 3 issues that we divide ourselves up into groups of 3 or 4 people to meet with the state legislators, and we have an agenda of what we want to bring up with them. And so we don't say, well, the proposed budget includes X number of dollars for for EAGLE, the new name for the Environmental Enforcement and Protection Agency in Michigan. But certainly that's a consideration. We want to make sure that they're properly funded. That starts out, of course, at the executive level with the governor. And so we want to see a governor that's sympathetic to environmental issues. And in spite of Governor Snyder getting a black eye over what happened in Flint, he was, in my opinion anyway, this is just a personal opinion, he was not a Neanderthal in terms of environmental issues. I think he realized the importance of it, even though we had a problem with a horrible problem with Flint. But for the most part, I think he at least recognized that it was something that the whole state government was to make sure that environmental issues were addressed. And so we haven't had a huge issue. Obviously, when there's a budget crunch of any kind, all the departments are going to be at risk. And so we do want to make sure they're properly funded. But it's not like we go there and say, well, we want you to add another $5 million to this budget.
A personal
Yes, sir.
anecdote about Saginaw Bay. I grew up about 1.5 miles from Saginaw Bay, kind of on the other side of the Bay County Park, Bay City State Park. And you know, from a practical matter, 70 years ago, one of the only ways to control water runoff was to have drainage ditches. And in Tuscola County, I lived a 1/4 mile from one of the largest drainage ditches that was developed, but almost every mile throughout the county, there was an extended length drainage ditch that created water runoff drainage into Saginaw Bay. And I used to go swimming in near Saginaw Bay because I could ride my bike for 1.5 miles and go swimming.
So that's what happened.
At the time, well, we're not sure of that. At the time, nobody really gave it a huge thought until along about the 60s and the development of an oil field, and then more knowledge came about with chicken coops and farming operations, dairy operations, and it kind of brought the old adage that you never drink water downstream kind of began to sink in, and people decided that something else needed to be done. But as of 5 years ago, the drainage ditches are still there doing the same work that they did 70 years ago. And the end result is Saginaw Bay water, which obviously is a part of Lake Huron and sooner or later ends up in Lake Erie. all those being downstream. So the only thing I can say now is that however I was able, it didn't affect me so badly that I, can't be the person that I am today. But there are situations that might not be the case. Barry, I didn't mean to step in front of you.
Yeah, I was just going to comment before Barry asked this question.
Right.
It used to be that the approach to unpleasant materials was the solution to pollution is dilution. And that might have been true 150 years ago, but we have enough people making enough unpleasant substances that it doesn't work anymore.
David, a good first name. My oldest brother's name's David too.
There you go.
Apologies for coming into the meeting a little late. I get cranky if I don't get my porridge first.
Well, we want you to get your porridge.
So you're back to Lake Erie and the green algae bloom. So that was back in about 2014, I think, or 2015. There's all kinds of aerial photos of that. And that was one of the reasons, coming from agriculture, as Lynn has already says, that's been my background, my whole career. Really interested in the impacts that's taking place relative to Lake Erie and the need to maintain the environmental integrity of it. And so our district Rotary District Conference in 2018 over in Ann Arbor, incidentally, I'm 1 hour down the 401 from Windsor. So that kind of geographically places me. So we had our district conference in Ann Arbor, in the Ypsilanti area. And one of the two themes of that conference in 2018 was the Lake Erie watershed and coming out of that bloom. And the year that I was district governor in 1718, I communicated very directly with my counterparts around the perimeter of Lake Erie. And so there is a high presence of the need for ongoing improvements relative to Lake Erie. And yes, agriculture has shared a lot of the responsibility, but obviously there's a lot of, it's always been thought of as a place to get rid of it, whether it's Cleveland or Toledo or Detroit or Chatham over here, and go down the river or go down to the lake. And certainly one of the strongest programs that we've got in Ontario is the Environmental Farm Plan for farmers. And it's been around since 1992. And there's been huge improvements, but there's still a lot of improvements that need to take place. So I guess my question, David, is yes, you've indicated in southeastern Michigan and Michigan. So does Sierra Club have chapters around the world? For instance, I'm glad that the Rotary International has taken on a 7th area of focus on environmental sustainability, as probably was shared at the beginning of the meeting. Just wondering what the presence is of Sierra Club internationally.
Well, Sierra Club is a U.S. organization only. There is a Sierra Club in Canada, though, but it's a separate organization. I don't know if they had any agreement about the use of the name and internationally or how that worked, but there is a Sierra Club in Canada, and its organization, though, is totally separate from Sierra Club in the U.S. And the Sierra Club in the U.S. is totally within the U.S. There are not locations internationally. So it does make sense sometimes to think about cooperation, and there is a lot of partnering. The Sierra Club, even though I say we think it's the best known environmental organization in the U.S., there are other organizations that we partner with for various activities, including things like political endorsements and taking positions on public issues. And I think that goes on also with other organizations internationally. But in terms of the actual operation of the organization, where our members are located and where they have meetings and so forth, it's totally within the U.S.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end. I was thinking One particular question that's of interest to me, and I think Rotarians in general, given the new area of focus, what Sierra Club's advice to Rotary clubs on what things we could be actually getting involved in to make a difference?
Well, it partly depends on your area of interest. To me, ultimately, what's going to happen with the environment is a political issue. The folks in Lansing, Washington, and what they decide to do and what kind of priority they give to environmental issues is fundamental. On a practical basis, you also can have influence at the local level. For example, a lot of cities have a tree ordinance with limitations on clear cutting of trees when somebody develops their property. And a lot of cities have that where a property owner can take down the trees, but if they do that, they have to minimize it. And in some circumstance, they have to replace it elsewhere with trees. And so that's a down to earth thing. You can see if your local community has such an ordinance and see if it's being enforced. There is litigation going on with that, I should tell you in case you run across this, but City of Canton has a very strong tree ordinance, and a property owner has been litigating over the requirement that they pay $50,000 for clear cutting property that was zoned industrial. And the judge's opinion was in favor of the property owner, the federal district judge, but it was based on the property being zoned industrial. And my reading, and this is based on a newspaper article, was that nobody expects a factory to look beautiful or to have trees on the site necessarily. And so anyway, but the point being to have your own local community have an interest in environmental issues, energy usage, things like that. Some communities have an environmental advisory board, and you can check to see if there is one in your municipality, and if not, suggest to the local elected officials and the mayor or city manager, and a city manager form of government. It's a city manager that really has control of things, although he or she has to answer to the city council.
Sure.
But start to talk to them about it. Well, do we have one of those?
Good idea.
How do I get on? If we don't have one, why don't we have one? How about if we start one? That would be a local level. In terms of some of our other activities, our bike ride, we call it the Green Cruise. I think I told you the name of it. We have in August. It starts out in Ferndale and goes to Birmingham and back through Royal Oak and back to Ferndale. We always need help among individuals to help administer that. Money is always useful. The situation with the Sierra Club nationally is that after the 2016 election, there was a great deal of interest in protecting the environment, and I won't get into why. But in any event, there was, and a lot of people joined, and there were a lot of contributions. And so we did well compared to previous years. Then in 2020, the pandemic hit and people got tight with their dollars. And so there's a little bit of a budget crunch. Then also, as far as politics is concerned, local candidates that you like, check and see if they have an interest in environmental issues and give them a few bucks when they're running for election. We also have need for people to be activists as far as the Southeast Michigan group. We have thousands of members in the area. Some of them just want to give a small check to the Sierra Club generally, and that's it. Some of them just want to go to the outings. Some of them do want to get involved in politics, but not too many want to be really activists in terms of going to meetings and organizing things. And the number of people that do that between the Southeast Michigan Group Executive Committee and the Political Committee, it varies, but you're talking about 15 or 20 people that do most of the work. And we did just recently have an election to the Executive Committee. And for better or for worse, we had, in contrast to the last several elections, we had more candidates than we had positions. So we had an election and a couple of reasonably qualified people lost, unfortunately. But For the political committee, you don't have to be approved or elected. You just go to the meetings and you become a member after you don't get there in the first meeting, but you get to be a voting member. It has been after 3 meetings, and we're changing that to making it a little bit easier. But the political committee, and we finished up for this year, obviously, with all of the endorsements. But if that's your interest, I can tell you we don't have the next meeting scheduled at the moment, but contact me and I can tell you when it will be, and presumably it's going to be Zoom for a little while, and be a part of that. As I said, the political committee considers endorsements of candidates and does some lobbying. So those are a few of the things, and you can always think of your own local projects.
Sure.
The Optimist Club in Royal Oak, we clean up 11 Mile once a year. A group of us go up and down 11 Mile and clean up the junk.
Yeah, we have a similar 2-mile project here.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's the kind of thing that can be done. So there's a whole wide range of things that can be done. And when I knew that was going to be a question, though, I was thinking of individuals,
Right.
Group effort. So as far as a group effort is concerned, there are projects that we can help with, have help with, either in terms of people working to administer the project, like the Green Cruise, or sponsoring it in terms of making a financial donation. So those are some of the things that can be done as a group.
Oh, great. Thank you. Any other questions before I call it a day? Penny wants to ask.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Zin.
I just wanted to make a comment, and Barry maybe knows more about this, but our district is working on a district project that and a zone collaboration for Earth Day to do some cleanup of watershed. And that's about as far as I can take it right now. But Karen, I know, is working to make that happen for April as a project for the district and for clubs who want to get involved. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, good.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I should tell you that one of the problems we have in the Southeast Michigan group is that when I say we have 15 to 20 activists, we have a few other people that will show up for things like we have had occasions we've helped to clean up the Clinton River and other places like that. But a lot of us are not young, and it's a big area and a big population. You have environmental issues that come up in municipalities, and I don't know exactly how many municipalities there are in the Southeast Michigan geographic area, but my wild guess is about 200. And so when some issue comes up at, say, Garden City, we can let people know who are members in that city that there's something going on, but it's hard for us to take any strong action because there's just too much going on. Other groups have a smaller area, or at least a smaller population, and are more able to do hands-on when a local issue comes up. And so when environmental issues do occur on a statewide basis, a lot of times the work on it comes from Lansing. If it's a huge issue, it comes from the national headquarters. But for local stuff, Southeast Michigan group were a little short of resources to address it. Get calls from somebody or emails from somebody that says, I got such and such a problem going on in my city on the western side of Wayne County. And we may have one person who's been very active that can help out. And so there's always stuff like that goes on. So we've got to start out in your own community, which is a philosophy we've taken, that we'll let you know when something's come up, and you guys need to take the bull by the horns in your neighborhood and work from there. And we're more equipped to handle broader issues rather than local issues. So to the extent you folks can do anything on local issues, that's great. And that would be very helpful.
Penny?
Yes. I noticed in the last maybe 2 or 3 years in driving around and driving down to Tennessee and what have you, you used to be able to find road cleanup signs and who was responsible for the cleanup. Driving down to Tennessee in September, I didn't see one sign. And I'm just wondering, do you know if that is that a program that has ceased to exist, the highway road cleanup, that individuals and groups can take part in?
As far as I know, the program is still there because I still do see signs, even though you may have seen areas where there was no evidence of somebody taking responsibility for a stretch of road. But I have seen it elsewhere. And so as far as I know, the program is still in existence. Obviously, whether people want to take the time to do that particular project depends on the locale and the people involved. And but I believe the program is still in existence. Although, and I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to get too deep into politics, but the current national administration, and that is a national program, at least it comes down from the national level, is not terribly pro-environment, to put it mildly. So they may not emphasize it the way it has been done in the past, but I'm not aware of it actually being discontinued.
Okay. No more questions. Lynn, would you take us away on the four-way test, please?
Sure will. The way we end our meetings is to think and recite the four-way test of the things we think say or do.
First,
You can read it on the sign behind me if you don't know the words. First, is it the truth? Second,
is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
fourth,
Is it beneficial to everyone?
We need to do better on that.
you have to figure out
If anything happens,
the
the
proper way. Anyway, thank you all for attending. Meeting will be adjourned.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for attending. Watch for the video.
Have a
Everyone.
good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.